Ah, very kind of you to say so. Most importantly, what does the B stand for, Matt? I feel like I should know.
Well, I mean, I could tell you not on this podcast. It's a trade secret. I mean, it's part of the magic.
Have you told me before and I've forgotten?
I don't think so, but I could tell you off the record, off the mic, as it were. Many people do know, um, but many people do not, and it is just part of the fun of being me.
What fun! What fun it is.
Well,
Uh,
I have a very common name. Matt Davis is an extremely common name, and so I had to differentiate myself.
so is the B real? Were you born with a differentiator, or did you kind of add it
No, no,
like?
no. It is 100% my middle initial. Um, but um, but yeah, there's a lot of Matt Davises out there, and I'm really happy because in the age of the internet, like if you Google Matt Davis, you're going to get 1,000 different things, including a very famous actor named Matthew Davis. But if you Google Matt B. Davis, you get me. So there you go. Really glad I didn't know that at the time. Didn't know what I was preparing for. But there you go.
In my head, you're like Dumbledore. It's Brian, isn't it?
It's exactly like Dumbledore. Yes.
Oh, very good. Matt, so here we are.
Here we are, Giles. Giles Chater, not Giles Chatter.
No, no. Although that a bit like getting around to the B, that took a while of getting over, didn't it?
Well, you never corrected me.
Well, I'm pretty chilled like that.
I don't know. But people say that. People like, oh, he called me the wrong name for years. I just let it go. I don't know that I could do that. Like if you called me Mark, I would instantly say it's Matt. I would not let you call me Mark, which people have done.
Oh, that's tempting.
Uh so here we are. It is a
It's Thursday all day,
it's a
Mark.
Thursday in March. I just left the Spartan trifecta in Georgia, which was a hoot. We were blessed with some warmer weather, and thank goodness, because it did dip into the 30s, which would be around zero your temperature. Like
Real temperature, real
just a few,
money.
just a few days after it was cold again. So I'm really grateful that we did not have a cold because it can go either way here in March.
And so, good event. We chatted beforehand. It was your first race under Jill.
Yeah, I never did quite get to speak to Jill, but she seemed to find every hill out there. We had over 1,800 feet of gain. I don't know how many meters that is. Um,
Left.
less, but a lot. And when you look at Georgia, Georgia's not known for its mighty peaks, especially in that part of the world. So good job, Jill.
Very good, very good. And before you headed out there, you'd called me up to chastise me for not giving you the good news about WTM pricing. And we thought, oh,
Yes.
we should talk about that.
Yes, how dare you? How dare you not give me the good news? I want to be the first to receive all good news. But I didn't chastise you as much as I just reached out and said, "Hey, is there some information available? Can I give it to the audience? That is my job."
I felt mildly chastised. I
Okay.
mean, mildly. There were no torches or pitchforks, so it wasn't as bad as the usual chastisement. But
Right. So, what would we like to say for first of all, I think some people were concerned about the venue, and then it turns out that it's a venue that Tough Mudder has been to multiple times. Correct?
yeah, I mean, certainly a venue that we have used before. It's not it. I mean, I think we've discussed this little bit of a debacle. We had this dream, um, getting the right venue and being able to invest in the kind of large obstacles, large features like epic theater of it all is really important. And we thought we had something nailed. Also in Florida, and that fell through due to some zoning rules. Uh, Note to selves: always speak to the lawyers first, not the business people, because the business
Yes.
people are in worlds of what's possible, and then right at the 11th hour when they drag the lawyers in, you sometimes find out that that's not being a real exercise. And so we had, both Tough Mudder and Spartan venues available to us, and we felt that this was the better of the venues. So that's great. I think it's going to be good. It's going to be good. A lot of the fears, I think, will be unwarranted. We'll make a really good weekend of it.
So will we go on? I don't know. Is it going to be like parts we haven't gone on yet? Is there going to be a way to supersize it, World's Toughest Mudder, it as it were, so it's not just another venue?
You want us to ship in alligators?
Ship in
They are alligators,
alligators.
right? They're not crocodiles. I lose track of which one's
I'm the
which.
wrong person to
Crocodiles are
ask
like
about
the
that.
scary Australian ones, and alligators are the fun ones people play golf with.
I think one is cold water and one is warm water, but I don't know. That's not my area. I'm from Georgia. I live in Georgia, not Florida, so slight difference. But um,
But yes,
anyhow,
to your question, uh, we will be able to make a really interesting, unique and challenging event weekend of it. So it's certainly not going to be dull. It's not going to be easy.
we want neither of those things. So, what other news do we have about World's Toughest
So
2024?
couple things. First one is pricing. I touched on it briefly with CBJ, but we are going to run the same prize pot across the solo race that we did last year. So off the top of my head, that's 5, 2.5, 1.5 across first, second, third, and then that's for male and female. And then we are going to introduce pricing across the team format as well. And the provisional numbers I'm working with on that are 8, 4, and 2 across first, second, and third place. And we'll just have a single team category this year. I'm going to pause primarily to ask why it is you're looking slightly confused.
I'm not confused. I'm typing. I'm typing so I don't forget.
That was your concentrating face.
That was my concentration face. Yes, I'm typing on the computer because if I open the phone to type, things will start notifications will go off. I'm much like a dog that's been I'm much like a dog that's been shown something shiny, and so I have to stay extremely focused. So I wrote teams of any size 842.
842, indeed. There's a very small possibility that we just tweak those numbers a little bit, but the principle here is we will have the same price pot across the solo race, and we are introducing pricing into the team race, and hopefully we will communicate that officially via our channels over the course of next week. But there's a staggering amount of email and other comms activity that happens, so it's surprisingly difficult to sneak an email into the schedule. If you've opened your inbox up and seen the volume that comes through, imagine trying to get an extra, like, please tell people about pricing into that schedule. It's more difficult than you'd imagine. But that's good. Which I guess brings us on to the team race. And I've been chatting to a number of athletes, who've been around the world circuit for a while and have engaged in the team product for a while, and we're looking to change up how we do teams. First off, we're just going to treat teams as one category, where previously we had teams of 2 and teams of 4. It's now teams of up to 4. So if you want to tackle it with a team of 2, that's fine. It feels like it's going to be mildly more difficult than throwing a couple of additional people into your team, or 3 or 4. So entirely up to you, and mixed as well. So you can have any combination of the genders in your team. Again, have at it. The biggest change, though, is we're no longer going to require 2 people to be out on course at any given time. So we've become a more traditional relay format. The team, whatever number you have in the team, will all need to complete the first lap and the final lap together. But between those bookends, you will be able to have just one person out on course if you want. You don't need to raise your hand, Matt. You can just shout at me. I feel like you had a question. There was definitely an arm up there.
I was doing the universal sign for yes. One moment, I have a question. It was an impulse.
What's your question? Hit me out. Oh, as long as it's an easy question.
Giles.
Mark.
See, now that's what you're gonna call me. Slight derailment. When I was a younger man and I would get introduced to people older than me, very often I would say, "My name is Matt," and they would say, "Mac?" So I think Mac was a very popular name at one point. I have not been, that's been long gone, but at once upon a time it happened pretty frequently. So I think Mac was a very common name, maybe in the 50s. I don't know. There also is a famous singer named Mac Davis, but I don't think they were even putting that part together. But I digress. Interesting thought came up. Interesting piece of information. Interesting thing came up in Saudi that I hadn't quite thought about ever before, which is this idea of we run the first and final laps together. That's been an important piece of the 2 and 4 person team. If you and I are attempting to time it right and we want to beat our neighbors, one moment, a cat is outside meowing. I must let him in. One moment, please.
You know that's not true.
Hang on. I'm going to get the cat and then we will discuss this. So we want to get one more lap in before the
Hold on,
time.
we gotta pause for a moment because this is me. I want to. You know, the cat would have been fine. They're great like that. You could leave them alone. They're not actually the boss. They're creating this illusion that you've got to be subservient to them, but you can just abandon the cat outside the door. I didn't know if you knew, but I wanted to share that with you.
Well, the cat is now eating, which let me know that he is in fact hungry. And so when my pets or children or wife says she's hungry, I usually like don't say you're fine. I actually open the door and let him eat them. I mean, you made it sound like it was such a difficult task.
That cat is laughing to itself, like mug is what it's thinking.
Now, I mean, again, I'm not sure where this is going. You make it seem like I've stopped my entire day to give him something diamond encrusted. I merely paused our conversation to open the door. Anyhow, let it be known, hashtag Giles hates cats. So
I love cats.
if we're running the race together, you and we want to get that one extra lap in, okay, and we don't make it, okay, we don't make it in time. We're supposed to finish by 1:30 and we don't make it. We finish at 1:45 when the finish line has closed. Do you then count my previous last lap as my final lap, even though we didn't run it together?
That is a wonderful nuanced question that I'm going to go back and ask the boys that write the rules. What do you think we should do, though?
I just think, yeah, you don't get credit for that lap. I mean, I think that's pretty simple. Someone in Saudi said, "Oh, well, you're disqualified then because you didn't actually finish," and it's like, well, that seems harsh. So now this cat knows you've talked about him. Now he's coming over. He's trying to get in the camera.
More to the point, the cat knows that he's the boss, and you got to bow to his will.
You make
just reinforcing.
I think there are people. I think there are people that do worship their pets and or children in a way that is highly unhealthy. I don't think I could be accused of that. Anyhow, somebody was suggesting that, and I thought that's too much. And I just thought, well, you just don't get credit for that lap, but we can still, you can still get credit.
Up an opportunity for an exploit. You could continue to run up to like the last 5 minutes, as an example, before it closes, burning everybody out, and then get the whole team burnt out together and limp out.
Well, no, because you still have to start. Because you still have to start the final lap by a certain time. So because that's still in play. You still have to. So if you don't, you can't run. You can't leave at 10 to 1. You have to leave by 12 or whatever the time is.
No, completely. Like, I understand where you're going. The fear is obviously, how can this be exploited? Because athletes are always going to look at the rules, stay within the rules, but try to maximize the performance within that.
No, wait, my cat is by the door wanting to go out. By your logic, I should just sit here and listen to this whining, which is interrupting my
absolutely.
day.
You should abandon your guest that you're speaking to live. I'll just fill in the awkward silence whilst you go let your cat out. You should do that.
The door is about half a second away. If you want to count one Mississippi, I'll be right back.
I miss you already. I can't even tell you gone, actually.
Now I refuse to edit this part. So listeners at home, you heard maybe 1.5 Mississippi. So yes, one could cheat, but interesting. It's funny enough. This has never even come up before. People really work on getting together for that last lap, usually with more than enough time. So I'm surprised this hasn't come up before. Maybe it has if we talk to Chris or somebody else, but go ahead.
And what we want is we want the team finishing a last lap that counts together. And we're certainly going to frame the rules in a way that maximizes the likelihood of that being the outcome. Because that's what we want to see. We want to see that team cross the finish line, celebrate that they're at the end of 25 and a half hours, they're hammering themselves and, do so together.
You could here's a thought I just had. There's a penalty involved, okay? And the penalty is harsh enough that it makes a difference. So it's like you could leave now, but if you don't make it back, right, it's a 1 hour penalty or something like that. Then it's like they're not going to try to get cute on you. But like, oh, we tried, wink, wink, but we didn't make it. So give us that previous lap that we ran really fast by ourselves. That's just a thought I had thinking out loud.
All I took away from that was harsh penalties. Matt wants harsh penalties.
Yes.
I agree.
Skin the cat, harsh
league.
penalties. That's what we've learned from this podcast.
We were debating back and forth. Do we allow the passing over of the baton? It's not actually going to be a baton, but with that traditional relay field between athletes within a team on a lap, and we're almost certainly going to default to yes. But in the same thing, we spent a chunk of time talking about, well, how can this be exploited? How do you make sure that if person A starts a lap, with your team's timing chip, and person B ends up, finishing the lap with that timing chip, that becomes permissible without the ability to move that forward on course artificially, passing it between people who are at different stages of, say, course that cuts back on itself. You're looking confused again.
Yeah, because I have no idea what you're talking about.
You could, in theory, have a couple people go out on a lap together because they're fun like that and they enjoy the chat. And say it's three of them just decided to do a lap, and one of them starts with, the team chip, because somebody has to be there. There is an active chip that's going around as well as your individual chips, and that person, gets injured or slows down or whatever that looks like. They could hand that over to somebody else in the team to finish the lap. That's not a problem as long as it is people in the team who are moving that chip through the active lap.
So what I'm sorry, I still don't understand the alternative. Giving it to a stranger and say, go give that to my teammate up there?
No, you could say that whoever starts a lap with the chip has to finish a lap with the chip. And that would mean if you send somebody out and they don't come back for 4 hours because they're injured, then you're just stuck. Whereas now you could just send somebody else to pick up the chip and keep going, as an example. Or if,
how would they communicate that they're still out there injured out there in the course?
I mean, you'd work it out. That's why I used the 4 hour example and not 45 minutes.
All right. Well, I suppose there's a loophole there somewhere, but I think you're thinking in the right direction, which is let's make sure people can't exploit this. But yeah, again, I'm surprised that hasn't come up, but people are usually really good about, okay, it's this time of day. This is how much time we have to run one more lap together. Let's run it, et cetera, et cetera. But with this new thing and getting different kinds of athletes, something you and I talked about, the kinds of folks that came to the relay in Saudi, like a VJ Jones, who probably wouldn't run by himself, but thinks he can do quarter of the work or half the work in a 24-hour period. He might come, and you're going to get these real speedsters out there as a way to try to win this race.
I think it is going to make for a slightly different, it's going to provide a slightly different feel, a slightly different race across the team format, which is exciting. If you've been part of a team and you're all, true endurance athletes, and you've really been, there've been a requirement to bring a set of people who can all do 100 miles individually into a team, then I think it's going to feel very different. And actually, I spoke to a couple of people who would be slightly worse off as a result of this change. But all in, I think it is going to introduce a new pool of athletes. I think it's going to introduce what will be a new and slightly compelling, a very compelling kind of race experience to watch, and it is going to make it beyond the race for the podium itself. I think it is going to make worlds more accessible to an audience of athletes who otherwise just wouldn't sign up and wouldn't get involved. And it's a weekend we want more people to participate in. It's an experience I want more people to experience. It's really quite something. And we feel this strikes the right balance between opening up elements of the race and the racing, whilst maintaining the kind of core as it's currently structured.
Yeah, so I didn't get a chance to listen to you talk to Christian, aka CBJ, but people seem to be upset about this notion of people doing the regular Tough Mudder on the weekend and not having a hot lap. And the hot lap was nice. It was a cool thing. It was a chance to let the pit crew do it and for regular people to walk the course if they wanted to just shake their legs out and look. But as Evan said, when I interviewed, we were doing a prep for World's Toughest. I said, "You go on the hot lap," and he's like, "No." And I said, "Well, don't you could actually see what obstacles they are and practice them." And he's like, "You're going to get plenty of practice in 24 hours." So last year, you guys did, in fact, as we say in America, fuck up, right? You promised a thing, you didn't deliver. The obstacles weren't ready for whatever those reasons are. That's not okay. That's one thing. Okay. Just saying we're not having it because we're not doing that anymore and we're giving you a different opportunity to run the course, to me, is not a problem. And it's just, I'm a little disappointed that this thing you offered for a couple years now went away. Because if you were here from 2011 to 2018, it didn't exist anyway. That's my thought.
Yeah, and it's a little bit of both. We're still going to make the course available for people who want to walk through it and have a look and familiarize themselves with the environment and get a sneak peek of what those obstacles look like. So you will be able to walk around, not dissimilar to what it ended up being on Friday last year. You just won't be able to go on the obstacles. So if you are there on Friday, you want to have a look, you absolutely can. There'll be a facility for that. We are not going to try and make the obstacles available. Part of that is driven by the requirement to get everything ready earlier than we otherwise need to. But we're hoping we won't have a repeat of the truck debacle we had last year. A big part of that is it just doesn't make sense. It's expensive to staff and open a course, and we just don't need to introduce elements of World Toughest Mudder that we know are always going to lose us money as we're trying to get this into something that's stable. We also now have an opportunity for, say, pit crew to run on a Saturday morning. Now, that's not as convenient, obviously, as running on a Friday, and they'll need to decide whether they take that opportunity up or not. But if they do run on the Saturday morning, it will be more of a fulsome experience than I think we have seen in any of the years where we did a hot lap.
Yeah, I would love to remind folks, being the old fuddy-duddy that I am,
Well, back to the 1950s when they still said Mac.
when they said Mac, 2011, there was no team race. 2012, I can't remember if it was 12 or 13 that they first introduced pit crews, but the pit crew was only allowed during the day. By 6 p.m., you had to clear the pit out, which I distinctly remember because I was in there doing what I do, running around trying to interview Ryan Atkins, and someone from Tough Mudder could be heard saying, "Who the fuck is that guy?" Me. Oh, I think he has a podcast. Like, he's okay to be in there. So and there was only one team, and that was all team sizes. Then we allow pit crews. Then we started 2 and 4 people teams. Like, the event changes over time. Like, it's okay. Just like the NFL changes or Major League Baseball changes, and some changes are made for the better. Sometimes they change things back. Replay, as a matter of fact, just a little fun fact, we had replay in the early 90s and it kind of sucked in the NFL, and it actually went away for a few years, and now we have the replay that you couldn't imagine not watching a play 1,000 times. So I am fine with those changes. I do understand the concept of let's make this thing more profitable. I also need to say out loud the idea that, and I don't know who the fuck says this, but if you said this, you have oh, I should be kinder. I am baffled,
At
I will
least as
say.
kind as you are to your cat.
At least as kind as I am to my cat. I am baffled by the concept of well, if people get on the course, then the obstacles will be muddy. Right? Like something of they've trashed the course as if Friday Tough Mudder or Saturday morning Tough Mudder racers are much like Godzilla and King Kong during the game Rampage and are just we're destroying obstacles. So that was the other piece of information that I saw in the comments that baffled me. And the other one was that people running Saturday morning would register for the race Saturday morning, show up, come into the tents and say, wait a minute, I didn't know there was World's Toughest happening. How much ramen soup and wetsuits can I steal? Kill for all of our tents while we're not there, and then go and then run the race and go home, or maybe skip the race and go home. Like, where is your head at, people?
I certainly on the first point, I think we introduced some of the narrative that we're now being beaten with in ensuring that World's Toughest was at that pinnacle. You know, we introduced this concept that we were putting it first, right, to give you the first stab, prestige moment, all that kind of stuff. I mean, as far as narratives go, not that helpful, not that real, and that's now coming back to bite us. But I agree. Practically speaking, you're talking about a couple thousand runners on a Saturday morning.
Who you think are the most vile, evil thieves in the world, and whose job it is to destroy obstacles like you are Godzilla.
Yeah, from a use perspective, it's equivalent to a couple laps of World. So no real difference. And actually, what we want is we want that number of people running World's Toughest Mud. I think in net, it's going to be a positive. We will build bigger courses to deal with that volume of people over a short period of time. So some of the kind of queuing experience we saw this year should go away. We'll have slightly bigger builds because we're only going to be on a 5-mile loop. We're not trying to build on that 10-mile loop, which just means obstacles are further away. We'll be able to deploy the full kit. So this is a net win. But if you're frustrated by change and you're looking for some reason to beat us, then we did introduce the narrative there that World's Toughest Mudder got first dibs at a clean course. I always found that weird with the idea of first mud, which was obviously again a marketing sell. Really, what you got is you got on the Tough Mudder course before there was any mud at all, and I feel like you missed the whole point of running Tough Mudder courses. But marketing liked it, and they could charge a margin there, an incremental margin for it, always good in the world. A similar thing with parking, right? 2,000 people, we'll just introduce the same we did on premium parking, and it might mean we get a fancy hangar and life is good. That's a pretty simple operational.
That is the one difference that I think I would say you should, quote unquote, should make accommodations for. If I've paid X amount, I'm now punished behind these people who paid less than me to do a similar thing, blah, blah, blah. I do think that is one concession I think you should make.
It's really, really easy to do. It's not difficult to.
Well, depending on the venue, sometimes it's not.
There are 2 points to that, though. One, it is really easy to segregate the front of parking for a particular set of the participants, in this instance, World's Toughest Mudder. So this idea that they'll end up behind the normal morning people, easily managed, not a problem. Completely separately, if parking is just miles and miles away, Atlanta, it doesn't. You can be at the front of that parking lot. There's still going to end up being a walk, but that is not influenced by, whether we
No,
have
it
that.
wasn't. Parking wasn't far in Atlanta. It was Vegas that was parking was so far away. You had to fucking drop your shit, go park your car, drag your fucking wagon back. Like Atlanta was close.
I mean, using close is a relative term. I don't recall Atlanta being particularly close either.
Okay. Well, I think the second
You
year
got to
you moved.
remember that you end up getting parked somewhere. It's too far away. You then drive and park right near the compound, and you're like, Giles, can't I just park my car here?
Which
So that's
but
usually your experience of
yes,
parking.
but I think of my fellow customer. I think of what you got. And yeah, I think the second year you moved it, you figured it out. Like, oh, we could actually start here and move the parking to here, whatever it was. I think you're talking about maybe the regular event that you came to a couple years ago. I don't remember. Anyway, the point is that is something you should make accommodations for. And yes, once upon a time, believe it or not, we had all these venues where you'd be bussed in. It seems like you guys, plural, Spartan and Tough Mudder, have figured out that's really bad and people hate it. So you don't do those venues anymore. But yeah, that was the thing.
I mean, there are two elements to that. One, people hate it. We try not to do it. It's also expensive and faffy, and both directions. You can never actually get the bus drivers to be where they want. No one on
Right.
lunch for an hour, and then you're in trouble.
Right.
Two, lest we forget, we used to have 15,000 people parking and turning and running up. And that number of cars didn't necessarily fit. All of a sudden, when you're talking about 3,000 or 5,000, it's a very different operation that you're looking at. Now, that's not a great problem to have. I'd rather have the previous problem. Although best in both worlds is 15,000 and no buses.
Yes, that is correct.
So you're going to run in a team this year? Get some of your grown-up friends from the 50s, your cat.
Wow. My grown-up friends. Well, every year I always say I'm going to do at least a couple, and every year I do a lap. That's typically what's been happening. I don't know it depends where I'm at. My I was saying to my wife, I think at least for now, I think my ultra running days might be over. I always was in shape to like run a long time. And now I don't really do a lot of double digit runs. And that used to be like that's what Saturdays and Sundays were for. So I leave my house or go to a park and do my 4 to 6 miles, and I'm pretty happy with it. So I could see myself running a couple of laps if they're this relay style. So we'll see, I guess. I mean, I think we might have a better weather situation than we've ever had, but anytime we've said that, we've been cursed with horrible weather. So who knows?
I mean, we've increased the likelihood that we don't have a miserable November by putting it in Florida. But as you say, who knows? Also, I mean, bad weather is part of the chat. Much easier for me to say because I'm going to be warm and dry regardless.
Well,
But
you do some work out there, though. I've seen you. I got an amazing video of you um, pulling pulling the wheelchair, and then my either my battery died. So it didn't make it. I had this amazing clip of you on my phone, and I'm really bummed it didn't make it. But can you real quickly? Do you remember the name of the branch again off the top of your head?
no,
No, no. Okay, so I'm going to
but
type in
I can
world.
text it to you afterwards. Or yes, you could ask the internet.
I'm asking the internet. November 9th and 10th, 2024, Clear Springs Ranch. So I'm going to point a couple things out to people. This is a very helpful show. Don't let people tell you that it's not. So we are going to hang on a moment, please. Here we are, the magic of Google Maps. Now, first of all, it actually says somebody called it Tough Mudder Central Florida, which I love. They did the same thing last year. You just typed in the words Tough Mudder. Where were we last year? Texas.
We were, and then the year before, we were somewhere that wasn't where we were supposed to be.
Anyhow, but if we type in, let's say, Disney World, right? It's a mere hour away. So, for those of you listening, some of our international listeners, or even those of us that live in the States, make a trip of it. You want to be to one of America's greatest achievements? Disney World. Disneyland is in California, different place. Go to Disney World, spend the day or a couple days, and then come down here and get yourself your Airbnb or whatever you're going to get in this region. Just letting people know, because a lot of people don't know what Central Florida is, right? You got
Are you
Fort
also
Lauderdale.
able to share with your listeners the link to the Absolute 80s, which I imagine is some kind of music streaming facility you have up there in your bar at the top? Between the login for SBA and your PNG, you've got Absolute 80s listening.
Oh, you cheeky bastard.
I mean, my eye was drawn to the. Oh, look at that's good work. That's good work. You should definitely drop a link. Drop a link for your viewers, your listeners.
Now, but do you notice? Would you notice where this website is from, though?
Yeah,
What does it
and
say? What do you see right there? What does it say?
the old Union Jack, British flag. We're familiar.
And what does this say? Just tell the people.
Radio UK.
Now I'm gonna
.co.uk. Absolute 80s.
now I'm
Do
gonna
you
tell
enjoy
you
it?
first. I'm gonna tell you first of all, is this working? I hope this link still works. I haven't listened to it in a minute.
You
I'm out of it. I'll tell you why I have this in my in oh, look at this. Do you see this little ad up top?
I'm excited. Buy a ticket, bet.
So I get it in the top and the bottom. So good job cookieing me. But I'm going to tell you something, Giles, since we're becoming best friends. I've told you this before. Bit of an Anglophile. Okay. When I grew up, the internet didn't exist. So if you wanted to watch Monty Python, it was because your friend had the VHS. That's right. I said VHS and loaned it to you for a few days. And then once in a while, it would come on PBS. That's our public television, right? I was also aware of um, punk music, right? I was a big Clash fan, right? I was a big Sex Pistols fan. I was fascinated with all things England, of course, the Beatles, right? And when the internet was new, I found this radio station that I listened to that was like Absolute 80s or whatever it was. Okay, yes, that was my amazing British accent.
Nailed it. That made me happy inside.
And this lovely English woman who could be the same person or 10,000 different women with this amazing accent would deliver these amazing 80 songs to me. And so every once in a while, I pull it up and it reminds me. I walk around my house. I don't put on Spotify, and I put on this old internet radio station that reminds me of the early days of the internet. Aren't you so glad I told you that story?
I am. I keep up the good work. Links for everybody. More absolutes in their lives. They do good 90s as well. Absolute noughties. They got some great channels.
Now, you call them that. We don't call them that. You call them the naughties. We don't call them that.
Yeah, you guys are pretty straight laced, aren't you?
We call them the 2000s.
Boring. I'm going to get back to work. It's always a pleasure.
I'm sorry, is this not work informing the obstacle racing audience about these amazing changes? Does this not work for you?
This is pleasure, Matt. This is pleasure. It doesn't help me, though, write contracts and send emails and do all the other bits and pieces that still needs to happen in the background. I will be sure, though, when we put out a fancy looking graphic with the prize money, that you are one of the first to see it.